Buongiorno my friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna talk about shafts. Yeah, shafts, because everything starts from a bend. Bends our energy accumulator. The rubber always like to go back into its original shape after it's been pulled from its original one. And the force that I apply transforms itself into the rubber in potential energy. The potential energy is applied to the shaft at the moment we release our trigger. So we have a transfer of energy that happens in the way that the rubber likes, so at a certain speed, in a certain way, through the water, but this is not what we're going to talk about today. The energy is transferred now to the shaft. So the shaft is going to go through the water, right? And it will carry the energy until it will be stopped. Because once it's going to be stopped by a fish, the energy is going to be now transferred to the fish, and we're going to have what is the impact. So by the law of physics that we don't want to discuss at all into this channel, because I'm not a physics guru. Basically what we really need to control is the speed of the shaft. The mass of the shaft, we know it. The speed is what we really want to be the highest as possible whenever we're going to hit on the fish. And to do that, we have to play out with energy. Energy, and most of it, energy losses. We all know about the drag. The drag is given mostly by the section of the shaft, so its diameter. Is given a lot by the length of the shaft as well, because there is more stuff to move in the water. Drag is given by the line we use, the thicker, the heavier, Dyneema versus nylon and everything. But today, again, we're not talking about any of this. We're going to talk about the shafts and how we control the losses of energy through the water, how we choose our shaft. The first thing that we have to consider is equal diameters, different lengths, right? Here, in this case, I have two 6.5 millimeter shafts, right? 6.5 millimeter shaft, 1 meter 40, 1 meter 60. What is the difference between them? Well, they look pretty similar. These are shafts that we're going to use in relatively light reef fishing, possibly with a gun that is single bend, and it's probably the most sold shaft in the world because they equip most of the spear guns that are sold every day in the world. But there is a significant difference, two significant differences that we will notice right away, and it's not just the length, of course, this we already said, but it's the weight. So the 160 is a little bit heavier, and the flexibility. So we have a lighter shaft here, and what we can see is that is definitely less flexible than is a big sister, right? Flexibility, yeah. We can see it also in thicker shafts. Here are two. Again, this is way more visible. We have 130 centimeter, 7.5 millimeter diameter, and the same 7.5 millimeter, 160 again. So again, two shafts, very different in weight. The 160 is relatively flexible, while the 130 is really a little, big bar, looks like a big rod compared to it. So what we notice right away is that we are talking about wobbling. We're talking about the capacity of the shaft of go through the water the most in a linear movement. But this doesn't happen. Doesn't happen at the moment that the shaft is released, where in 90% of the spear guns, we're going to have a lift of the tail of the shaft, and the higher is the lift of the tail of the shaft, the lower is going to be the start of your ballistic. And the second is that once the shaft is released, it's going to move through the water, and all these movements are losses of energy, because we are going to increase the drag by the section, because now we don't have a linear shaft that goes through the water, but we have a banana shaft that goes through the water. So the drag is going up, and also the will of the shaft to go back to its original shape is what we lose as energy. So this is a very important factor that we have to take care of. The second approach that we can use when we have to choose the shaft that we want for our spear gun is, again, same length, different diameter. So if our length of the gun, of course, because we have our own gun already, and we have to choose the shaft that we wanted to use, we will most of the time being blocked by the length. We're never going to have hyper long shaft, and we cannot have too short shaft. We cannot have our tip inside the barrel, right? But for what we said before, 8.5 millimeter, 7.5 millimeter, 6.5 millimeter, you can see the difference again of flexibility. The 8.5 millimeter 1.6 is as more rigid than 140 6.5, of course. And this is the 7.5, we already saw it, right? More flexible. And the 6.5, hyper flexible, you know. So if we are setting up a big gun, for big fish with a lot of bands, with a lot of power, we really need to increase our diameter if we really want the shaft to not lose all the energy that we're going to put on. If we're going to put 3 or 4 bands on a 6.5 millimeter shaft, all we're going to have is a shaft that goes in the water and leaves all the energy around, and when it impacts the fish, it doesn't have mass, it doesn't have speed, it doesn't go anywhere, right? And very, very imprecise as well. So these are the variables that we have to take care when we choose the shaft and we set up our spear guns. We said the diameter versus length, basically. So what we want really is to, on reef fishing, on blue water fishing, is that the shaft keeps his movement through the water the most linear as possible without losing energy, so carrying all his speed, all his mass to impact the fish and possibly land it. So, said that, I really want to thank you to have taken part to this long speech about shafts. I ask you to subscribe to my channel if you like what you're seeing. Pass the information to your friends as well if they wanted to connect. If you wanted to comment here below and leave your advice on what I said, I'm open to every type of critic, of course. I am responsible for what is my experience only, and that's it. So, as always, guys, enjoy it.